Hi guys, welcome to the channel Only English Literature. Today we are going to dive into the intense and thought-provoking world of D.H. Lawrence's short story The Prussian Officer. Let's explore the intricate dynamics of power, repression, and the human psyche. The Prussian Officer is a powerful short story that delves into the dark and complex relationship between a domineering Prussian officer and his orderly, a young soldier. Set against the backdrop of the Prussian military, the story examines themes of authority, suppression, and the destructive nature of power. The officer, a rigid and authoritarian figure, embodies the strict discipline of the Prussian military. The officer's cold, authoritative demeanor hides a deeper, repressed, emotional turmoil which he projects into his subordinate through relentless bullying and intimidation. His orderly, a young and vibrant soldier, represents innocence and vitality. Yet, he is trapped under the officer's oppressive command. The officer had small, sharp blue eyes that went through one like steel and cold, thin lips that shut sharply. The orderly was a fair young fellow with the face of an Italian boy. From the outset, the relationship between the officer and his orderly is marked by harsh discipline and psychological abuse. Because of officer's growing homosexual behavior towards his orderly, as he used to carry a pencil on the back of his ear to write frequent love letters to his girlfriend. The officer, beneath his controlled exterior lies a deep sense of dissatisfaction and alienation. He struggles to connect with others, including his mistresses, and finds solace only in the discipline of military life. As the story progresses, the officer's obsession with his orderly grows. He becomes increasingly harsh and unpredictable, taking pleasure in the young soldier's suffering. Apparently, we can see the behavior of a sadist in the officer, which is caused due to repressed sexual desire for the orderly. The orderly, although silently enduring the abuse, begins to harbor intense feelings of resentment and hatred towards his superior. The tension reaches a boiling point during a march through the countryside. The officer's relentless cruelty becomes unbearable for the orderly, who, pushed to his psychological limits, experiences a profound internal struggle. This culminates in a violent confrontation, where the orderly, in a fit of rage, attacks and kills the officer. After the brutal act, the orderly, overwhelmed by the enormity of what he has done, flees into the forest. Exhausted and disoriented, he collapses and eventually dies, succumbing to his physical and emotional turmoil. He was quite alone, and he had had no sleep for 2 nights. His limbs were tired and his brain felt dead. In the Prussian officer, the officer's underlying emotional conflict reflects the broader theme of the dehumanizing impact increasingly obsessed with the soldier, both admiring and despising his freedom from societal constraints. The orderly is tragic and underscores the devastating consequences of living under constant oppression. His unplanned desire represents the instinctual unconscious. He is impulsive and passionate, driven by his primal desires. As the story progresses, tensions between the officer and the soldier escalate, culminating in a violent confrontation in which the officer lashes out in a fit of rage, ultimately leading to tragic consequences. Lawrence's The Prussian Officer is a powerful examination of human relationships under extreme stress. It forces us to consider how power dynamics can warp the human spirit and lead to tragic outcomes. Through the complex relationship between the officer and the soldier, Lawrence explores the psychological tensions within the human psyche and the consequences of repressed desires that lie beneath the surface. According to Sigmund Freud, repressed desire refers to unconscious wishes or impulses that an individual finds unacceptable or distressing, leading them to be pushed out of conscious awareness. These desires are typically related to instincts, often sexual or aggressive in nature, that conflict with societal norms or the individual's own moral standards or superego. Freud believed that repression is a defense mechanism the mind employs to keep these uncomfortable or socially unacceptable thoughts from entering consciousness. However, these repressed desires don't disappear. They continue to influence behavior, often manifesting in indirect ways, such as through dreams, slips of the tongue, Freudian slips, or neurotic symptoms. Thus, repression came out in the captain forcing his intense, conflicted feelings towards his young orderly, which can be interpreted as a mix of repressed desires, homosexual desires, envy, and deep seated resentment. His desires manifest as sadistic control and cruelty. The captain abuses his power over the orderly, subjecting him to relentless and irrational torment, which can be seen as an outlet for his unacknowledged impulses. And the orderly's anger, initially internalized, eventually erupts into violence. The breaking point occurs when the orderly, after enduring prolonged abuse, snaps and murders the captain in a moment of uncontrollable rage. The story serves as a meditation on the struggle to reconcile the conscious self with the instinctual forces, where the conscious self refers to the aspect of an individual's mind that is aware of thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. It is the part of the self that engages with the external world, makes decisions, and reflects on experiences in real time. In everyday terms, it is sense of I or me that experiences things and interacts with the world. And the instinctual force refers to the innate, powerful drives or impulses that originate within an organism, often tied to biological or psychological needs, and push it to act in certain ways. These forces are typically unconscious and are linked to survival, reproduction, and basic needs like hunger, thirst, or the need for safety. In psychological terms, instinctual forces compel behavior without conscious thought or deliberation. Now we are going to talk about the captain's orderly's instinctual forces. Captain's first instinctual force are aggression and power. The captain is driven by an instinct for domination and control, a force that manifests as extreme cruelty towards the orderly. His sadistic behavior, which includes humiliating and physically abusing the orderly, is heightened by the hierarchical military setting, where power is concentrated in the hands of him. Second one is repressed sexual desire. Although the captain may not consciously acknowledge these feelings, his obsession with the physically attractive orderly and his irrational intents need to control him suggest a sublimated sexual instinct. Next, orderly's instinctual force. First one is survival and self-preservation. As a subordinate, he is powerless in the face of the captain's authority, and his survival instinct compels him to repress his anger and submit to the captain's will, at least outwardly. The next one is aggression and sexual freedom. As the captain's cruelty escalates, the orderly's instinctual aggression, which has been repressed for so long, begins to build until it eventually explodes into an act of violence. He murders the captain in a final uncontrollable outburst.